I want to welcome in Greg Swaim, who is joining to talk about potential Big 12 expansion. Greg, thanks for joining and welcome to the show.
Well, appreciate you having me on, Matt.
Now, there's a pretty big vote later this week on the potential deregulation of conference championship games. All 10 FBS conferences are going to cast a vote. From what you are hearing, how is that vote going to play out, and what are you aware of in terms of how the Power 5 and Group of 5 conferences stand leading in?
Well, this thing looked like it was going to, a couple weeks ago, just going to go by and it wasn't going to be a big deal. Big 12 has, of course, kind of seen the handwriting on the wall after last year when Baylor and TCU got passed up to be in the top four by basically not playing the last game. Had Baylor and TCU played in a conference championship game, which the Big 12 doesn't have, one of those teams would have gotten in, and Ohio State would have been left out. This year, you saw by Oklahoma not even playing a game, they went from 3 to 4. And so I think the Big 12 kind of realized, we need to have a conference championship game. It started getting talked about. They want to have one, they want to have their cake and eat it too. And financially, who could blame them? I mean, they're only splitting the pie 10 ways. They don't have a network, them and ACC are the only two that don't have a real conference network. But the Big 12 allows Tier 3, which is kind of like, the Longhorn Network, Sooner Vision, some of those. So they get to keep that too. And I said, well, let's go ahead and just keep our 10 teams. We'll have a conference championship at the end. And it looked like that was, maybe what was going to happen. All of a sudden, the Big Ten said, wait a second. We've been adding on teams. You guys, if you want to do it, you need to do it by divisions. The ACCs had talked through about kind of changing things around with divisions. So I think what's happening is the other schools are like, hey, if we're going to do this, have divisions, do it the right way. We all need to be kind of doing it the same way. So there's going to be this vote on Friday at the National Convention. And it's looking more and more like with the Power 5 schools get 2 votes each, and the other 5 conferences getting let's say Power 5 teams, Power 5 conferences getting 2 votes each, and the other getting 1 vote each. That it's going to, make the Big 12 say, hey, if you guys are going to do this, if you're going to have a conference championship game like we do, and like you believe you need to have to get your team's best chance of getting into the playoffs, you need to have 2 divisions. To do that, they need to add at least 2 teams. So that's what has kind of been happening, and it looks like from all indications that they'll be forced to add 2 teams at least to have divisions, whether it'll be East, West, or South, we don't know. And obviously West Virginia, way out there in the East, kind of needs a partner. Connecticut, your neck of the woods, been talked about. Cincinnati, obviously, has been talked about. Could be both those. Brigham Young, obviously, is a long time ago when conference expansion was happening. BYU was talked about, the Big 12. The media out here really feels like BYU is a lock. And then they feel like, either Connecticut or Cincinnati. And to be honest with you, Cincinnati's always been talked about. Connecticut's kind of a Johnny-come-lately as far as the media out here is concerned. And it makes a lot of sense. Obviously, Matt, this is about football and money and all that. Connecticut has some pretty big footprints, but geography probably not on its side as much. Cincinnati, was in a good metro market, and they're very close to West Virginia too. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens if this vote actually does come down the way we think on Friday. It will be all over it, of course. Then who are the 2 teams? And it's going to be a lot of fun. Somebody's going to get their heart broken. Heck, maybe everybody does. Maybe the Big 12 says, well, you know what? We just want to have a conference championship game. That is a possibility. The Big 12 is more bottom line than any other conference I've ever seen.
Now, you mentioned on social media yesterday that there's been a lot of talk on this subject at the National Championship Media Days in Glendale. and that the consensus there among the media members is it's going to be BYU and UConn should it come to fruition. How much stock should fans of those schools put into that prediction? And is that what those media members are hearing from Big 12 school and conference administrators, or is that just opinions from the media?
Well, there's a lot of East Coast media out there, and I'm sure some of them have a bias towards one school or another. But a lot of the East Coast media this week, and it kind of came to fruition yesterday, that they're hearing Connecticut very, very strongly. And I'm sure behind the scenes, Connecticut, Cincinnati, BYU, whomever, I've even seen Tulane, Memphis, Boise State as being mentioned. I would say those schools are definitely on the outside looking in. I'm sure every one of them has a representative, calling Bob Bowlesby, the commissioner of the Big 12, or somebody in the Big 12 office said, hey, we'll do whatever it takes. And doing whatever it takes may be a big part of it because the Big 12, like I said, kind of likes to keep their money. You as an individual, if somebody came to you and said, hey, you've got to do this, but it's going to cost you 20% of your revenue this year for your family, you wouldn't be real thrilled about doing it. So it's going to probably come down to the Big 12 wanting to have the two teams after they're kind of told to do it, to have their conference championship game. And, the conference championship game will, generate revenue, so that might help with part of it. But they've got to look at, not only the money, although that's a big, big thing for the Big 12, what's going to maybe increase our bottom line, or certainly hurt it the least, which teams will hurt our bottom line the least, and also bring us more prestige. Connecticut, because of what their basketball team has done, we know Kevin Ollie down here pretty well because, he played for the Thunder, and he still recruits down here. Obviously, what Connecticut women's basketball, nobody's done what Gino has done, so and he still recruits down here too. So I would love to see them in the Big 12, just personally as a basketball fan. But football, Connecticut was in the Fiesta Bowl a couple years ago, got beat pretty good by Oklahoma. I think Connecticut's a sleeping giant. You've got that entire northeastern area that if they're in a major conference, I think they'll recruit really well. It's going to be so much fun to watch, but once again, everything's kind of contingent upon that Friday vote going the way that we hear it's going to go, and a lot of other media, it's not just me, are starting to jump aboard this thing, and it's a big story if it happens Friday, because then the Big 12 likely does add, and who the two teams, and I don't believe they'd add any more than two, at least not this time. Who they would add, it'd be a lot of fun to watch, and this thing will really blow up on Friday.
No, I know a lot of our listeners' ears are going to pop up when they hear what you just said. Now, focusing on one of the other schools you did mention, BYU, are you hearing they would just be a football-only edition, or do you think the school would waive their long-standing mandate of no play on Sundays if they became full members? And does that stance really hinder their chances any compared to, say, a UConn or Cincinnati?
Now the BYU no Sunday play, it's not going to help. But I don't think it's a major deal. As far as the football only thing, I think BYU would, if the Big 12 came to them and said, hey, this will be a football only thing, they'd probably be fine with it because nobody plays football on Sunday in college football, so that's not an issue. Now basketball, baseball, some of the Olympic sports, it could be. They would work around it, I'm told, and I'm also told by not the Big 12, but several schools I've talked to, that they would really rather have a full member. So playing all the sports.
Okay, and then finally, I want to give you the chance to share with the listeners what you have coming up and where they can find you online and on social media. So just a couple minutes on where they can find you and what you got coming up.
Well, I appreciate that. My forte really started out as a basketball recruiter on the McDonald's All-American Committee, both the men and the women now for 25 years. And so I in basketball, men's and women's. And they've had players from my neck of the woods that have played our camps. And Gino's been down here and seen a lot of players over the years. So we've got to know both their staffs, the men's and the women's. But on Twitter, this Twitter thing kind of took off for me. I just joined a couple years ago, and we started doing it, and it kind of blew up. It's been a lot of fun, but what we find out there on Twitter at Greg Swaim, it's just G Swaim, GSWAIM, like in Mike.
I definitely appreciate you taking the time on a Sunday morning to join Greg, and definitely look forward to catching up with you down the road as these expansion rumors continue to heat up.
All right, man. If UConn gets in, I look forward to meeting you.